Back to the book. The 5th Duke of Cornwall's light infantry had attempted to attack Hoven village through these ghastly woods and had taken heavy casualties. Their rain-soaked bodies littered the paths and clearings. While carrying out a reconnaissance, I came across one of their sections lying along a small path facing the enemy. At first I thought them alive until I saw that the studs on their boots were rusty and their webbing equipment was bleached with rain. Their battle dress was starched with mud and their hands and faces were green. German booby traps were on or near many of the tracks, and I was told by the company commander of the 4th Wiltshires, from whom we took over the position, that some of the bodies were also booby trapped. "Don't try to bury them," he said. I was temporarily commanding the company because Douglas had been given a well-deserved leave in Brussels. Although militarily comparatively uneventful, Hoven has a special place in my memories. It was without a doubt the most grisly and horrifying position that we ever held, but more importantly, it was the place of Private Charles Raven's triumph. Raven had fought in all our battles since Hill 112, which to him was a yardstick of horror. All subsequent experience was compared with that, his first battle. He was no soldier. I doubt if he influenced greatly any of the skirmishes, encounters, or battles in which he took part. Sometimes he was frightened, and he was so out of place on the battlefield that I often wondered how he became an infantry soldier. Before the war, he had been a clerk in North London. I am sure he was a conscientious and loyal employee and a considerate and loving husband, for, unlike most of us, he was married. Raven had hidden depths and could be inspired. Once in Normandy, during a nasty little platoon attack up a sunken lane, 18 platoon was held up by the inevitable unlocated Spandos. Straining my eyes through binoculars, I was trying vainly to locate these guns when I was handed a steaming mug of tea. He should have been observing to his front, but, judging the moment right, he had brewed a mess tin of tea on a solid fuel stove. By any standards, this was an inspired act. He was considerate with our reinforcements. Pale, unsure men, some of whom, until recently, had served in the Royal Artillery and had been transferred to infantry regiments to replace the appalling losses incurred in the Normandy bocage. Beside them, Raven looked bronzed and weather-beaten, a hardened campaigner, complete with a German Luger pistol to prove it. Some of the platoon regaled the reinforcements with horrible tales from Normandy and Elst. As little more than a schoolboy, I found these stories amusing. Raven did not. Fear, for him, was horribly real and never to be joked about. He developed a paternal attitude toward the newer and younger soldiers, a relationship devoid of patronage, but essentially one of kindly understanding. He spoke to me about it when I thanked him for his help. "I admit I'm dead windy, sir." His extraordinary honesty with himself and the rest of the platoon forbade him to attempt to hide the fact. Raven had overtaxed his nervous and physical resources long before we arrived in Hoven Woods. After 2 days in the position, he came to me late one evening and asked my permission to report sick the following morning. I suppose I should emphatically have refused, but something made me hesitate and avoid dealing directly with the situation. I said simply, "All right, Raven, but do come see me before you leave." He didn't come. The matter was never again mentioned. I can only surmise the struggle which raged in his mind all that night while he crouched in his waterlogged slit trench peering into the sinister darkness of the wood. I do know, however, that in Hoven Wood A considerable moral triumph over stark horror was achieved by a good man, unequipped by nature for war. In my view, the bravest of the brave. So that guy, Raven, had been through all this stuff and just barely held the line, and finally he was going to break. And he comes to Sidney Jary and says, hey, I'm going to go sick tomorrow. Sidney Jary says, okay, come and see me before you go. He doesn't come back. Doesn't come back to him, doesn't go sick.